I was refused entry into my company's annual dinner. The manager said, "You have no place here. You are just a cleaner." The next day, he received a letter that shocked him. "Hello. Thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story." Today's special shout out goes to Peter Campbell from Australia. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's dive into the details of today's story. I'd never scrubbed a toilet in my life until that Monday morning. My hands, usually wrapped around a pen or a phone, gripped a mop instead, and I stood in the middle of Carter Enterprises' third-floor bathroom, staring at my reflection in the streaked mirror. Danny Cole, cleaner extraordinaire, stared back, not Daniel Carter, son of the CEO. The uniform scratched my skin, and the name tag pinned to my chest felt like a lie I'd only just started living. But I'd asked for this. Begged for it, really. It all started 2 weeks earlier, over dinner with my father, Harold Carter. He built this company from a single warehouse to a corporate giant, and I'd grown up hearing his name whispered with reverence or fear, depending on who was talking. Lately, though, I'd caught rumors. Not the polished reports that landed on Dad's desk, but the kind you hear in bars or see scrawled on anonymous forums, employees grumbling about low pay, managers drunk on power. I wanted the truth, not the sanitized version. So I pitched him the idea, let me go undercover. Work the bottom rung. See what's really happening. He'd laughed at first, his fork hovering over his steak, but I pressed. You want me to take over one day? Then let me learn it from the ground up. He'd stared at me, gray eyes narrowing, then nodded. 1 month, he said. Don't screw it up. Now here I was, day one, pushing a cart full of cleaning supplies through the gleaming halls of headquarters. The place buzzed, phones ringing, heels clicking, voices overlapping in a symphony of ambition. I kept my head down, blending into the background like I'd planned. My hair, usually neat, hung shaggy under a cap, and I traded my contacts for glasses I didn't need. No one gave me a second glance. Perfect. The first person to talk to me wasn't a manager or a suit. It was Maria, the receptionist on the 5th floor. She caught me emptying her trash bin, a half-eaten sandwich tumbling into my bag. New guy? Huh, she said, leaning over her desk. Her voice was warm but tired, like she'd been here too long to care about much. I nodded, mumbling, yeah, just started. She smirked. Well, welcome to the grind. Watch out for Lawson. He's a real piece of work. I filed the name away. Lawson. Someone to watch. By noon, I'd heard it again. 2 guys in the break room, hunched over coffee cups, muttering about Greg Lawson like he was a curse. He chewed out Tina last week for forgetting a memo, one said, shaking his head. She cried in the stairwell. The other snorted. He's gunning for a corner office. Doesn't care who he steps on. I lingered, wiping a table that didn't need it, letting their words sink in. Greg Lawson, middle manager, ambitious, cruel, my first target. I didn't see him until late afternoon. I was mopping the hallway near the elevators when the doors slid open, and out he stepped, tall, broad-shouldered, suit crisp like he'd ironed it with his ego. He barked into his phone, pacing, then brushed past me so fast I had to jerk my mop out of his way. Keep the floors clean, kid, he snapped, not even looking at me. His voice was sharp, like a blade he enjoyed swinging. I watched him stride off, his polished shoes leaving faint scuffs I'd have to buff out later. My grip tightened on the handle. So that's Greg Lawson. The rest of the day blurred into a rhythm, sweep, mop, empty, repeat. But I wasn't just cleaning, I was listening. Overheard snippets painted a picture, workers stretched thin, managers playing favorites, and a tension that simmered just below the surface. Maria caught me again near the end of my shift, tossing a crumpled sticky note into my cart. You're quiet, she said, eyeing me. Most newbies complain by now. I shrugged, forcing a grin. Just getting the lay of the land. She nodded, but her gaze lingered, like she saw something I hadn't meant to show. I'd have to be careful with her. Back in my apartment that night, I peeled off the uniform and sat at my desk, the city lights glaring through the window. I pulled out a notebook, a cheap one, not the leather-bound kind I usually used, and started writing. Day 1, Greg Lawson, middle management. Arrogant. Hated. A problem. I tapped my pen, replaying his voice, his careless shift past me. He didn't know who I was, and that was my edge. 1 month, Dad had said. I'd use every day to dig deeper, to see how far the rot went. This wasn't just about proving myself to him anymore. It was about the people I'd met, the ones who didn't deserve to be ground down. I flipped the notebook shut and leaned back, the weight of the day settling in. Tomorrow, I'd go back. I'd mop, I'd listen, and I'd watch Greg Lawson closer than he'd ever suspect. Because something told me he was just the beginning. My second day as Danny Cole started with a spilled coffee I didn't make but had to clean up. Some suit from the 10th floor knocked it over rushing to a meeting, didn't even glance back as the brown puddle spread across the tiles. I knelt there, rag in hand, and realized this was my life now, fixing other people's messes while they didn't notice me. It stung, but it was why I was here. The less they saw me, the more I could see them. I'd barely finished when Maria waved me over to her desk. "You're quick with that mop," she said, tossing a candy wrapper into my cart. "Most guys take a week to stop griping." I gave her a half smile, keeping it casual. Not much to complain about yet. She raised an eyebrow, like she didn't buy it, but let it drop. I liked her, sharp, but not cruel. She'd worked here 6 years, she told me later, and I wondered what kept her going in a place that felt like it was grinding people down. That's when I started hearing the stories. Not loud, not obvious, just fragments, like pieces of a puzzle I had to fit together. I was wiping down a vending machine in the break room when 2 women from accounting slid in, voices low. Greg tore into Tina again. One muttered, punching buttons for a soda. She forgot to CC him on an email, and he acted like she'd burned the building down. The other shook her head. He's got her terrified. She's one mistake from quitting. I kept my head down, sponge moving in slow circles, but my ears were wide open. Greg Lawson. The name kept coming up, a shadow over every conversation. Later, I caught him in action. I was hauling a trash bag past a conference room when the door flew open, and there he was, towering over a woman. Tina, I guessed, his face red, voice slicing through the air. "If you can't handle basic tasks, maybe you shouldn't be here." She flinched, clutching a stack of papers, and I saw tears in her eyes as she nodded fast, like a kid caught breaking a rule. Greg stormed off, leaving her trembling. I ducked around the corner before he spotted me, my jaw tight. He didn't just manage, he bullied. And no one stopped him. By midweek, I'd mapped out his game. In the office, he was a dictator, snapping at anyone below him, docking hours for tiny infractions. But upstairs, with the execs, he morphed, smooth, all smiles, shaking hands like he was running for mayor. I saw it Thursday, trailing my cart past a glass-walled meeting room. Greg laughed at some VP's joke, clapping the guy's shoulder, while the VP nodded like Greg was his golden boy. It hit me then. He wasn't just mean, he was smart. He knew who to kick and who to kiss up to. A climber, clawing his way to a bigger office. And he didn't care who got crushed under his heel. I started keeping a notebook stashed in my locker. Not the fancy kind I'd used at home. This was a dollar store spiral, pages already curling. I scribbled what I saw. Greg Lawson, middle manager. Yells at Tina, 10 a.m. Wednesday. Takes credit for sales team's report, Thursday. Little things, but they added up. Evidence, I told myself. Proof for Dad that this place wasn't the shining empire he thought it was. Maria caught me off guard Friday, though. I was restocking paper towels in the supply closet when she poked her head in. "You're always watching, aren't you?" she said, arms crossed. My stomach flipped. Had I slipped? I shrugged, playing dumb. "Just doing my job." She stepped closer, voice dropping. "No, you're different. Most cleaners don't care who's yelling at who." Her eyes locked on mine, searching, and I forced a laugh. Maybe I'm nosy. She didn't laugh back, just nodded slowly. "Be careful, Danny. Nosy gets you noticed." She left, and I stood there, heart thudding. She was too close to the truth, and I couldn't tell if she was a friend or a risk. That night, I sat in my apartment, notebook open, pen tapping the page. Greg Lawson wasn't just a problem. He was a symptom. The staff hated him, but they feared him more, and that fear kept them quiet. I'd heard enough to know he wasn't alone, either. Other managers pulled the same stunts, just quieter. The company was rotting from the middle, and Dad didn't see it. I didn't have a plan yet, but I knew I needed more than whispers. I needed something big, something he couldn't ignore. Then it came. Saturday, end of my first week, a memo went up on the break room board. Annual dinner, next Friday. All staff welcome. My pulse kicked up. A room full of execs and workers, Greg strutting his stuff. It was perfect. I'd go, watch him closer, catch him off guard. Maybe even talk to him, see what he'd say to Danny the cleaner. I tore my eyes from the memo and headed out, the game shifting in my head. 1 week down. 3 to go. And next Friday, I'd step into the lion's den. The week before the dinner flew by in a haze of brooms and hushed conversations. I'd gotten good at being invisible, pushing my cart, head down, catching every word that drifted my way. Greg Lawson stayed my focus, his name a drumbeat in the staff's complaints. By Friday, my notebook was thick with notes, his tantrums, his favoritism, the way he docked a guy's pay for clocking in 2 minutes late. I had enough to make a case to Dad, but the dinner loomed like a chance to see it all play out live. I wasn't missing it. I didn't bother changing out of my cleaner's uniform that night. It was part of the act. Danny Cole didn't own a suit, didn't belong in a ballroom. I figured I'd slip in, blend with the crowd, watch Greg work the room. The venue was a short drive from headquarters, a fancy hotel with a chandeliered ballroom that screamed money. I parked my beat-up rental, a far cry from my usual ride, and joined the stream of employees filing in. Some wore ties, some dresses, but most looked uncomfortable, like they'd rather be anywhere else. The entrance buzzed with chatter, a mix of forced laughs and nervous glances. I stayed near the back, hands in my pockets, scanning for familiar faces. Maria was there, in a simple black top, chatting with Tina from accounting. They nodded at me, and I gave a quick wave, keeping it low-key. Then I saw Greg. He strutted in like he owned the place, suit tailored sharp, hair gelled to perfection. He shook hands with a VP, grinning wide, then barked at a waiter to fetch him a drink. Same old Greg, king to the top, tyrant to the bottom. I edged closer to the doors, figuring I'd trail the crowd inside. That's when it happened. Greg turned, mid-laugh, and his eyes landed on me. His smile vanished, replaced by a sneer that hit me like a slap. He broke from the VP and marched over, his stride eating up the space between us. "What the hell are you doing here?" he snapped, voice loud enough to turn heads. I froze, hands still in my pockets, and mumbled, thought all staff were invited. He stepped closer, looming, his breath sharp with whiskey. "You have no place here. You're just a cleaner. Get out." Before I could respond, he waved at 2 security guys by the door, big guys, ex-bouncer types. "Escort this kid out," he said, already turning away like I was trash he'd tossed. The guards grabbed my arms, firm but not rough, and pulled me back. Head swiveled, Maria's eyes widened, Tina flinched, a dozen others stared. I didn't fight it, just let them steer me through the lobby and out the front doors. The night air hit me hard, but not as hard as Greg's words. Just a cleaner. They echoed, cutting deeper than I'd expected. I stood there, alone on the steps, the muffled music from inside mocking me. My face burned, not from anger, not yet, but from something rawer. Humiliation. I'd spent a week scrubbing their floors, listening to their pain, and in 5 seconds, Greg had stripped me down to nothing. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms. He didn't know who I was, sure, but that didn't matter. He'd done it because he could, because he thought I didn't count. I walked to my car, legs heavy, and slumped into the driver's seat. For a minute, I just sat there, staring at the dashboard, replaying it. The smirk on his face, the crowd's silence. I'd wanted to see the real company, and I had, ugly, petty, and cruel. Greg wasn't an outlier. He was the system, the guy who thrived while people like Tina and Maria swallowed their pride to survive. I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over Dad's number. Part of me wanted to quit right then, rip off the disguise, go back to my old life. But another part, the part that had mopped up that coffee, that had seen Tina cry, wouldn't let me. I dialed. He picked up on the second ring, voice gruff. "Daniel? You okay?" I took a breath, steadying myself. "I'm fine, but I've got everything you need." He paused, and I could hear the shift in his tone, the CEO waking up. "What happened?" I told him. "The dinner," Greg's words, "the guards." I didn't sugarcoat it. "He's a bully, Dad. And he's not the only one. This place is broken." Silence stretched. Then he said, "Come home. We'll talk." I hung up, the phone warm in my hand, and started the engine. Anger was kicking in now, hot and focused. 1 week as Danny Cole had shown me the cracks. Tomorrow, I'd start breaking them wide open. I woke up Saturday with a fire in my chest that hadn't been there before. The dinner replayed in my head all night. Greg's sneer, the guard's grip, the way the crowd just watched. I'd gone to bed Danny Cole, but I got up Daniel Carter, and I wasn't playing anymore. My apartment felt too small, the walls pressing in as I paced, waiting for Dad to call me in. When my phone buzzed at 9, his voice was clipped. Meet me at the office. Bring your notes. I grabbed my spiral notebook, threw on a suit, first one in weeks, and headed out. Game on. Headquarters was quiet, the weekend stripping it down to a skeleton crew. I took the elevator straight to the top floor, no mop this time, just the weight of what I'd seen. Dad's office door was open, and he sat behind his desk, tie loose, looking older than I remembered. He didn't waste time. Tell me everything. I dropped the notebook in front of him and started talking. I laid out Greg's reign, yelling at Tina, stealing credit, the docked paychecks. I ended with the dinner, my voice steady but tight. He threw me out like I was nothing, Dad. Called me just a cleaner in front of everyone. His jaw clenched, and he flipped through my scribbles, eyes narrowing. This stops now, he said, pulling a letterhead from his drawer. He wrote Greg's termination letter right there, pin-slashing the page. Effective immediately. Misconduct. Breach of company values. I watched, pulse hammering, as he signed it, Harold Carter in bold strokes. Then he slid it to me. You deliver it, he said, leaning back. You earned it. I stared at the paper, the ink still wet. Part of me wanted to argue, let HR handle it, keep my hands clean. But the other part, the one still stinging from last night, grabbed it and nodded. I'll do it Monday. Monday morning, I walked into the office a different man. No uniform, no cap, just a tailored jacket and a purpose. Heads turned as I passed, whispers trailing me. Maria caught my eye from her desk, brow furrowing, but I didn't stop. Greg's office was on the 6th floor, a corner spot he'd bragged about. I knocked once, sharp, and pushed the door open. He sat there, feet up, scrolling his phone like he owned the world. He glanced up, annoyed, then froze when he saw me. Who are you? He snapped, dropping his feet. I stepped in, shutting the door behind me. Daniel Carter, I said, letting it hang there. His face didn't change. Why would it? He didn't know. I tossed the letter onto his desk, watching it skid across his papers. Read it. He snatched it up, eyes darting over the words, and I saw the shift, confusion, then panic. His head jerked up. Termination? What the hell is this? I crossed my arms, keeping my voice even. It's what you get for running this place like your personal kingdom. For yelling at Tina. For kicking me out of the dinner. He blinked, mouth working. Then it clicked. Wait, the cleaner? No, I cut him off. Harold Carter's son. Yeah, I was Danny Cole for 2 weeks, and I saw everything. His face went white, then red, like a switch flipped. He shoved the letter aside, standing fast. You can't do this. I didn't know. I was just keeping order. His voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. Please, I've got a mortgage, a kid. I need this job. I didn't flinch. You should have thought of that before you treated people like dirt. He lunged forward, grabbing my sleeve, and I yanked free, stepping back. You have no place here, I said, throwing his own words back at him. His hands fell, and he sank into his chair, staring at the letter like it was a death sentence. I turned and walked out, his silence louder than any plea. The elevator ride down felt endless. My chest was tight, not with triumph, not exactly, but something heavier. I'd wanted this, hadn't I? Greg gone, justice done. So why did it feel like I'd swung a hammer I couldn't put down? I hit the lobby and saw Maria watching me, her expression unreadable. Danny, she said, tentative. I gave her a nod. It's Daniel. Long story. She didn't push, just watch me go. Back home, I stood at my window, the city sprawling below. The letter was delivered, Greg was out, but it wasn't over. I'd torn off the mask, shown my hand, and now the whole company would know. My phone buzzed, texts from coworkers I'd barely met, rumors already flying. The cleaner's the CEO's son. Lawson's fired. I set it down unanswered. 2 weeks as Danny had changed me, and I couldn't go back. Not to the old me, not to the sidelines. Greg was just the start, and I had to figure out what came next. The fallout from Greg's firing hit the office like a shockwave. By Tuesday, the whispers had turned into a roar. Every break room, every hallway buzzed with it. The cleaner was the CEO's son. Lawson's gone. I walked in that morning, no disguise, no card, just me in a jacket and slacks. Eyes followed me, some wide with awe, others narrow with suspicion. I didn't blame them. 2 weeks as Danny Cole had made me one of them, until it didn't. Now I was Daniel Carter again, and I had to figure out what that meant. Maria caught me first, leaning over her desk as I passed. "So, Daniel," she said, dragging out my real name like a test. "You're a big shot now, huh?" I stopped, meeting her gaze. She wasn't mad, not exactly, just sizing me up. "Not really," I said. "Just trying to fix things." She tilted her head, skeptical but softening. "Well, you shook the hive. People are talking." I nodded, moving on, but her words stuck. The hive was shaken, all right, and I wasn't sure what'd fly out next. Dad called a meeting that afternoon, all staff, no exceptions. The auditorium was packed, hundreds of faces, some I knew, most I didn't. He stood at the podium, gray hair catching the light, and I sat off to the side, feeling every stare. "Carter Enterprises is changing," he started, voice firm. "We've heard you," through one of our own. He glanced at me, and the room shifted, a collective breath held. "Effective today, raises across the board, better hours, and an open door to me or Daniel if you've got a problem." A murmur rippled through, then applause, tentative at first, then loud. I caught Tina's eye in the crowd. She was clapping, a small smile breaking through her usual nerves. He kept going, listing reforms I'd fed him from my notes, things I'd heard as Danny, things Greg had ignored. When he finished, people swarmed me, hands outstretched. A guy from maintenance gripped mine hard. "Thanks, man. Didn't know you were one of us." I didn't correct him. Part of me still felt like I was. Maria pushed through, smirking. "Told you I knew something was off. You're too quiet for a cleaner." I laughed, the first real one in days. "Guess I owe you a coffee for not ratting me out." She shrugged. "Make it a good one." The next few days blurred into action. Dad put me in charge of a new role, liaison between the staff and the board. No corner office, just a desk near Maria's, close to the pulse of the place. I met with workers, listened to gripes Greg's firing hadn't fixed, broken equipment, cliquey supervisors. I wrote it all down, no spiral notebook this time, just a laptop I typed fast on. Dad acted quick, too. 2 more managers got the axe, quieter than Greg, but just as toxic. The air started to shift. People stood taller, spoke freer. Friday, I hung my old cleaner's uniform on my wall, a faded blue thing, name tag still pinned. I stared at it, hands in my pockets, remembering the coffee spills, the late nights, Greg's sneer. It wasn't a trophy, it was a reminder. I'd walked their path, felt their weight, and I couldn't unfeel it. My phone buzzed, Dad checking in. "You're doing good, Daniel," he said, softer than usual. "Proud of you." I swallowed, nodding even though he couldn't see. "Thanks. We're not done yet." He chuckled. "Never are." That night, I grabbed a beer and stood by my window, the city humming below. 2 weeks as Danny had cracked me open, showed me a company I'd only known from the top, a father I'd underestimated, a self I hadn't met. Greg was gone, his desk cleared out, his allies scattered. But it wasn't about him anymore. It was about Tina's smile, Maria's trust, the guy from maintenance who'd thanked me. I'd swung the hammer, like I'd wanted, but now I had to build something with it. I overheard 2 workers in the hall that morning, voices drifting as I locked my door. "Maybe this place can be different now," one said, cautious but hopeful. The other grunted. "If the kid sticks around, yeah." I paused, key in hand, letting it sink in. They didn't know I'd heard, didn't know I'd already decided. I wasn't going anywhere. Carter Enterprises wasn't perfect. Maybe it never would be, but it was mine to shape now, not just Dad's. I'd started as a cleaner, ended as a voice, and I'd keep going until the cracks were filled. For them. For me. And that's how I turned the tables, one mop at a time. What did you think of Greg getting what he deserved? Drop a comment below. I want to hear your take. If you loved this story, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss what's next. We've got more twists coming your way. See you in the next story.